Well, another loss. The Golden State Warriors have now matched their entire loss total from a year ago when they went 33-8 at Chase Center. They're now 9-8 at Chase Center on the year. The Warriors fall to 3 games below 500. It's not looking good, folks. I'm going to play some sound for you from Steve Kerr. I apologize. They're 2 games below 500. But I'm going to play some sound from Steve Kerr where he was asked, what is going wrong with this team? And his answer is certainly not what I was hoping to hear. Brandon Podziemski had an interesting answer. I'm going to play some sound from him in just a moment. What's been bugging me for a very long time, what was different about the 2022 Golden State Warriors that has not been replicated since, that wasn't followed in terms of a philosophy before that in 2020, 2021? What was different? If the clarity finally hit me, and the answer should have been obvious, but I'll reveal that later in the show as well, because this team has talent, folks, but ineptness at the coaching level, the wrong players getting the wrong minutes. It could be as simple as that. Maybe there's not enough talent. We'll try to break it all down next. Dub Nation, I'm with you. This hurts. And for the final show of the year, not the way we wanted to go out, but here we are. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hope you folks are winning money out there if you're playing. The official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets, good as cash, with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Threads at Dog Wild, coming to you live from the Locked On Podcast studios in Guerneville, West Sonoma County, California, following the Golden State Warriors losing a disappointing 132-122 game at home to the Dallas Mavericks. They're now 15-17 on the year. If the playoffs started today, they would be completely out of the running. They would not even be a play-in team. They're behind the Houston Rockets, folks. It's all looking good. And before we get to all the details of what went right, I'll say this. Something at the end of the game was very encouraging, and I'm going to get into that in just a moment, because it could be a glimpse of hope, because if Steve Kerr starts doing what he did at the end of tonight's game on a more consistent basis, there's still time to turn things around. There's 50 games remaining in the regular season, okay? The Warriors are 15-17 right now as we close out 2023. Happy early New Year's, everyone, by the way. There's 50. That's a lot of games still to play. There's still a lot of time remaining. That's some good news right there. But nothing's been trending toward things, heading in the right direction so far, except for what I saw at the end of tonight's game. And I'm going to get into that in just a moment. First, though, again, Steve Kerr in his post-game press conference, and bless you, Anthony Slater, for being one of the only individuals who asks the questions that I feel like in most other markets wouldn't even be considered difficult questions. But here in the Bay Area, where most of the media members subscribe to what I call group think, where they all follow the same storylines, the same narratives, they all want to make Steve Kerr happy. Well, Anthony Slater is a bit of an independent journalist, so kudos to you. And he's the one who I believe who was asking these questions of Steve Kerr. And let's hear what Steve Kerr had to say when he was asked why the Warriors are struggling. What is going on with this team that is wrong? Let's hear what Steve Kerr has to say.
Do you feel like right now you have a group of guys, a group of 5 guys that you could throw out?
My apologies. That's Zena Kata. So thank you to Zena Kata for asking that question. I have to give credit where credit is due. Let's start again.
Do you feel like right now you have a group of guys, a group of 5 guys that you could throw out there and just feel really, really confident in them? And
well, I think first of all, I love the guys on this team. You know, we have a really good group. I think they have a good chemistry. They get along well, but you know, we haven't found that grit that every team needs, every good team needs, where you pull together and you just play for the group. We're not there yet. And that's a problem. You know, we, like I said, we got great guys, love every one of them, but until this team really connects in a way that is solely dedicated to winning each and every game, then we're going to be stuck in this place. So we need to get there.
Do you feel like right now you have?
Well, so there was a follow-up question to that I think Anthony Slater asked, and that's the part I was hoping that would be played in that clip. I apologize. In fact, I think Anthony Slater posted that attribution on his own Twitter account. And let's see real fast if we can get the whole soundbite. And I do actually have it right here. I apologize for that. Sometimes when you're doing a live show, you got to make decisions very fast. And let's listen to the extended version of that, because there was a lot more to it, and especially in the second part. That's the part I wanted to listen to. I will skip ahead if it starts at the same place.
Well, I think, first of all, I love the guys on this team. You know, we feel it. You can feel
All right, here we go. So here's the follow-up.
Where do you think that shows, like, that lack of grit? I mean, because it's kind of an intangible, but where do you think that manifests?
You can just feel it. You can feel it. It is intangible, so it's difficult to describe, but you can feel when a team is connected, competing together, everybody's energy is right. The difficult thing in the NBA, and this is one of the things I think about all the time as a coach. Every guy in that locker room has a unique set of circumstances, and every one of them is under tremendous pressure. To perform. If you're Steph Curry, you're under pressure to remain one of the great players in the world. If you're Usman Garuba, you're trying to make it in this league as a two-way guy and elevate yourself and your career. And I could go down the list. Every single guy has a story. And I think about that all the time. And I care about each and every guy, and I want him to succeed. But I care most about the team winning. And, the irony is that things always work out best for each individual player when they just lose themselves in the game and the team and commit to the quest, to the cause. And all the great teams do that. They get there. We're not there.
I mean, simple to, I guess, ask, like, do you just feel like individual agendas are, a problem right now?
All I said was we're not competing through the tough parts of the game, and there's an intangible, there's a feeling, there's a vibe where you fight, where everybody's energy is right, and we don't have that right now.
Yeah, and very nondescript. I mean, when you're using words like vibe, like connectivity, grit, I mean, these are very vague, abstract terms. I get what he's trying to say, but there's a lot of hypocrisy there. There's a certain amount of nonsensical logic there. What Steve Kerr is basically trying to say there, if I'm interpreting this correctly, is that he wants everyone to buy in and not put any of their individual wants and desires ahead of the main goal, which is to win. But as I'm sure he's aware of, human beings are complex. Everyone's different. Klay, he mentioned Stephen Curry and Usman Garuba. Those are two very easy names he threw out. Names he didn't throw out. Moses Moody, who you did not play at all tonight. Immediately after being arguably, and I think generally people are in agreement on this, Moody was the best player for the Warriors last game. So when you respond with 0 minutes for him, I don't understand how you can convince a player like Moses Moody that to buy in, to to make these sacrifices when there is a part of this in terms of your future career, right? Moses Moody at some point, I'm sure, wants to get a bigger contract. Moses Moody at some point, I'm sure, is in his mind thinking about playing in this game for 15 years, for longevity, for legacy, for making his mark. Every player has that mentality. When Steve Kerr took over this team back in 2014, that idea of the buying in, of the collective goal and focus being a world championship, it's a lot easier to sell that when every individual understands their role. What has happened, though, in the last 10 years is these, what was once very safe roles for these individuals are no longer safe because injuries happen, aging happens, life happens. And you also have some new players who you have voluntarily brought in. No one forced you to draft Jonathan Kuminga. No one forced you to draft Moses Moody. You could have traded those picks away. You could have continued to settle for role players to surround Stephen Curry with, but you chose not to do that. You chose, and when anyone who wants to come back and say, well, Steve Kerr is not the GM of this team, he's involved in every one of these draft picks. There was an attribution just this last summer that I brought up last episode where Anthony Edwards shared a story where Steve Kerr told them they never once considered drafting him because of his work ethic. Very revealing, because for anyone who still has doubts about Steve Kerr's role in the grand scheme of things, in terms of his role as a personnel individual, not just as a head coach, he's very involved. There are no big decisions being made without his clearance and approval. That includes draft picks. So times have changed, coach. And that mentality that he had in 2014, where Draymond Green was your starting power forward / starting center in the death lineup, where Andre Iguodala was set as your sixth man coming off the bench, but he knew he was finishing games. Steph and Klay knew they were getting 30-plus minutes a night, and they were the starting backcourt. Everyone had a role, and everything was structured, and everything as a result was copacetic. But this is where I'm arguing that Kerr is not the right guy moving forward because times have changed. You have new players who not only are deserving of bigger roles, but when you're trying to sit here and force this idea of team first, of championship first, you can't sell that on a young player who's trying to make his mark in this game, on a young player who's trying to develop a place for themselves in this game, who's trying to actually, build a future for themselves. And this idea of a lack of grit being the problem with the Golden State Warriors, in theory, I get it, but in practicality, no, you can't make that work with this current roster. Now, he did something right. Klay Thompson did not finish this game. He should not have. And when we come back, I'm going to share what happened at the end of this game that was very encouraging, despite the fact that Moses Moody got a DNP. Moses Moody in game 32 of the NBA season got a DNP. That's outrageous. I'll leave it at that. But to me, and I started saying this early last year, I've been hosting this show for 3 years now, and I've been covering the Warriors as a podcast or whatever this role is for about 6. Because 3 years before that, I was covering the Warriors with Rick Barry on the Rick Barry Show. Been covering this team in general between print, radio, broadcast for 25 years now, almost. Back in 2000 is when I started working at KNBR. And a lot of that stuff was behind the scenes. Some of it was, behind the mic. But point is, it wasn't until last year where I started criticizing Kerr. Last year was the first time I got the sense, regardless of whether or not he was the right person for the job in 2014, and he was, there's no argument there, he's not the right guy now. Because you've got a whole new generation coming up. You've still got your veterans. You've got to, he doesn't seem to grasp the concept of development, of individual growth for these players, because you do have young players who need to be playing out there and who are deserving of playing out there. And again, it wasn't until last year. For anyone who thinks I'm some Kerr hater and hates a strong word, I don't hate Kerr at all. I think personally he's a fine individual. But as the head coach of the Warriors, the track record speaks for itself. And when you hear answers like that for why the team is struggling, coach, look in the mirror. You're not playing the right guys. Moses Moody should not be getting DNPs in game 32 of the NBA season. That's just ridiculous. That should not be happening. We'll have a lot more to discuss in just a moment. We got some sound from Brandon Podziemski. The Splash Brothers, we got to talk about them. They struggled mightily tonight. First, though, let's give some love to one of our sponsors, who's the official sportsbook for the Locked On Podcast Network, and that's FanDuel. How's everyone doing tonight, by the way? I'm sorry for not checking in on the chat. Uncle Chef 30, by the way, writing, you lost trust in Kerr at the Kings game. Yeah, for me, it was last year. Again, if you're an everydayer who's been following this show from the time I stepped into this role, there were people in year one of me covering this team for Locked On Warriors. And I started covering it the year they won the title. There were people pissed off at Kerr back then because I don't know if you remember Damian Lee, Juan Toscano Anderson getting minutes. There were people agitated, but that team made sense. And I'm going to get into that as well because there is a clear difference between the 2022 Golden State Warriors and all the other teams these last 5 years. And it's beyond obvious now what that difference is. And it's a shame that the Warriors just abandoned a very successful philosophy and approach to winning. But I'm totally with you. But we got a lot more to talk about. I don't want to be disrespectful to our sponsor, FanDuel, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. And look, the NFL regular season is wrapping up. The 49ers have a huge game tomorrow at Washington. I am so pumped on Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, the whole group. There's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. When you place a $5 bet, that's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. It's so easy to use. FanDuel is super fun. Every time I travel outside of California, the first thing I'm doing is downloading the FanDuel app. I have friends here in California who are using VPN services so they could play FanDuel. It's so fun. You could do live same-game parlays. You can find bets in their new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make sure your first bet is a layup. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Oh, we got a disclaimer. I have to read this. Okay. Oh boy. All right. Jesus Christ. I did not see that I have to read a disclaimer now. So you must be 21 and over and present in select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Kentucky, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Tennessee, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777, or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700, or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, or call 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Wow. I got to figure out what to do with that moving forward because that just took up like 5 minutes. More in just a moment.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Let's hear from Brandon Podziemski, who he was asked this question following the Steve Kerr attribution. And I hope the sound from Anthony Slater came through good, or where the audio was high enough. So here's the follow-up. This was Brandon Podziemski. Real fast, Podziemski did not start tonight. He was pulled in favor of Chris Paul. Trayce Jackson-Davis started in place of Kevon Looney, and the results were mixed at best. The Warriors trailed right from the outset. But here is Brandon Podziemski talking about the team's issues on and off the court.
Steve said off court chemistry wise, this team has it. Everyone gets along great, but on court, you guys haven't found the collective grit to just win as a team. Do you feel that when you guys are out there?
I feel like you feel it just kind of on the bench, not when you're out there. I think everybody just kind of needs to bring it for everyone else and for us as a collective whole. We talked in the locker room after. We kind of just got to check our energy, each and every one of us, when we step foot into the locker room, and all of our thoughts, regardless of what's happening, because everybody has their own personal problems going on in life. Whatever's going on, we just got to kind of channel that energy and focus on winning the game every night. But like he said, off the court, we're the closest friends, probably of any team, do a lot of stuff together. So it's just on the court trying to find that balance of, putting everything for the team.
All right, so there's Podziemski, and again, he came off the bench. My theory, the way to explain that, I think, is Steve Kerr did something that I love to start the game, and it wasn't taking Podziemski out for Chris Paul, but it was going with the front court of Kuminga and Trayce Jackson-Davis. I love that front court. Podziemski, by the way, tonight in 28 minutes, 13 points. He was 5 for 8 from the field. He was one of the few shooters out there. Him and Chris Paul were really it in terms of being effective 3-point shooters. Podziemski was 3 of 5 from beyond the arc. Finished the game again with 13 points, 9 rebounds, added 4 assists, and again in nearly 29 minutes of play. But my guess is the reason why Podziemski was pulled for Chris Paul was because Chris Paul gets it in terms of understanding the value that Kuminga and Trayce Jackson-Davis and these other young players bring to the table. And he involves them. He communicates with them. I feel like Chris Paul does everything that I wish Steve Kerr would do with the youngsters, being empathetic, engaging with them. These are young human beings. You can't treat Kuminga, Trayce, Pods, even though Pods seems like just an incredible student of the game. I feel like what I'm trying to say is I don't think Podziemski would do anything wrong in terms of any setting where he's a student. He seems to know exactly what to say. He's a good dude overall. And this is not to slight any other youngsters, but my point is Chris Paul is engaging these young players. He sees the value in terms of what they bring to the table, and he's coaching them more than the actual coaches are doing. So that, I think, is why Chris Paul was starting tonight. Again, did not have the greatest of results. The Warriors were outscored 34-26 in the opening quarter. I thought Steve Kerr pulled Trayce Jackson-Davis way too fast in this game. He just has no patience with the youngsters. If it's not working like immediately, it's just a 2-second, like, boom, you're done. And yeah, so mixed results there. Kuminga real fast, I thought had a fantastic game. Except for the 3-point shooting. That's the one part of his game he hasn't gotten down yet. He's below 30% on the year. He's hovering at that mark. Was 1 for 5 from deep, but Kuminga now has 12 straight games of double-digit scoring. That is literally the definition of consistency, and this is for a player averaging 21 minutes a game. So kudos to Kuminga for doing that. Had another solid outing tonight, 16 points. The rebounding numbers are certainly getting there. He had 9 tonight. And from the field, the shooting was great. He shot 50%. had 2 trips to the free throw line, was 3 for 4 from the free throw line. But one thing that I saw at the end of the game, which look, I know I might be grasping, okay, for anything that looks good here, but we're going into a new year, right? And when you think about the symbolism and the, all the meanings that we try to take in with the end of one year and the beginning of another, I'm trying to be hopeful. And one thing I saw at the end of this game that I absolutely loved was a lineup of Stephen Curry, who, by the way, did struggle tonight, and I'll talk about him in just a minute. Brandon Podziemski, Andrew Wiggins, who had a good game tonight. And Wiggins, by the way, just to read his stat line, 28 minutes. It was a good, not great game. He was 5 for 13 from the field. That's actually not good. 1 for 3 from deep. Did have 5 rebounds, 14 points. A good, not great game. But this is the Wiggins of now. This is the Wiggins and it's worth noting, by the way, because I would support trading Andrew Wiggins at this point. There is a logjam at that wing position, which has been intensified with Klay Thompson's regression, where Klay is now a 3. Klay Thompson is no longer a guard. He's now considered a forward, and we define that based off his defensive assignments. He can't guard fast perimeter players anymore. It really sucks. And so he's created this logjam at the wing position, and his shooting night tonight just really amplifies the issue there. So if look, Klay's probably not going to get traded. Just we got to be realistic here, regardless of whether or not the numbers may justify it. But look, there's a lot of sentimentality that comes with Klay Thompson. He still is a threat offensively, even despite the night he had tonight. You see the gravity he causes, the spacing he creates. But an Andrew Wiggins trade to me makes the most sense. But what I did see tonight was that lineup of, again, Curry, Podziemski, Wiggins, Kuminga, and Trayce Jackson-Davis. And the Warriors made a run in the fourth quarter when Kerr went to that. Now, why did he wait until the fourth quarter to try that out? I don't know, because Steve Kerr. But if he starts going to that consistently, and if he actually spends some time trying to develop that group and maybe tinkering a little more, maybe instead of Podziemski, maybe you have Klay when he's not having a horrible night. Maybe Trayce Jackson-Davis is replaced with Draymond Green. But I do like the idea, if you're going to keep Wiggins, of having Wiggins and Kuminga together and working out the kinks there. Because those two as a duo, their net rating sucks. So the only way to fix that is reps, is experience. They got to play together. So we'll see what happens with that. But I was encouraged by that a little bit. And we'll see what happens. Chris Paul actually did finish the game, and Chris Paul is going to lead into what the final segment of the show is going to be, which is what the hell happened in 2022, which resulted in the Golden State Warriors winning a title that the team has not been able to replicate last year or this year, and that the team couldn't do the year before that. There is a very fundamental difference, and I'm going to explain what that is. Yeah, it's just when it just sucks that the Warriors, for some reason, will not follow this. And Steve Kerr is a huge reason why. I'm going to explain what I mean in just a moment, after I give some love to our other sponsor for this evening, and that's PrizePicks, which is daily fantasy made easy. It's daily fantasy that's super fun. And the premise is super easy, folks. You're betting on individuals, and you're betting on individuals either scoring more than or less than a certain amount, grabbing more than or less than a certain amount of rebounds. You can go across sports. You could make one of your players Stephen Curry and maybe say he's going to score more than 29.5 points tonight. And then you could also make your other player, because you got to bet on a minimum of 2 players, make your other player Brock Purdy. I don't know what his total is for touchdown passes tomorrow. Let's say it's 3.5, and I decide, I think Brock Purdy's going to throw more than 3.5 touchdown passes. I think Stephen Curry is going to score more than 29.5 points. You put those two together, you can bet up to a maximum of 6 players together. If you get the 6-player parlay nailed, by the way, you can win up to 25 times what you put in. It's a lot of fun. If you follow sports religiously, neurotically like I do, it's that much better. And maybe you can win if you actually study the game as much as I do. And again, if you can always DM me if you ever want pointers and tips on that. I'm at Dog Wild on Instagram. Again, I play PrizePicks as much as I can when I remember because it is so fun. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. For the everydayers, we're going to be back at it in the new year. This is the final show of 2023. Happy early new year, everyone. Wishing you all success and happiness in 2024. I don't know if we're going to be back at it on Monday or either Tuesday, possibly a post-game show after the Warriors take on a suddenly damn good Orlando Magic team. That game will be at home. So at the latest, that'll be our first show of 2024. Real fast, got to mention the Splash Brothers tonight, who struggled mightily. If you look at those thumbnails that I create for the show, I call them the Brick Brothers tonight. I couldn't think of a better catchy pun or name for them. But Klay Thompson, again, did not finish the game, which is not the norm for Klay. That's a very rare occurrence, actually. It was the second or third time this season that's happened. He played 26 minutes, 24 seconds. He was 1 for 11 from the field. And of those 11 field goal attempts, 6 of them were threes. His only points in the entire game came from a single 3-point shot. He was 0 for 5 from all field goal attempts inside the 3-point line. He struggled. And it creates an extra amount of stress on this team as a whole, largely because Klay is no longer that shooting guard who can defend the Kyries of the world back when Kyrie was in his prime. He's no longer the guy that can guard quick players. That's not who he is anymore. And that's a huge negative for this team. Now, kudos to Steve Kerr for for pulling him and not having him finish the game. In hindsight, maybe should have and could have done it sooner. But Klay finishing with 3 points on just an awful shooting night, and these kinds of nights they're just a bummer. I don't know how else you can spin that. Stephen Curry was better, but by his standards, a rough night for him as well. 9 of 25 from the field, 6 of 15 from beyond the arc. Did finish the game with 25 points, but he was struggling. The first quarter, especially, he was trying to force things. You saw him putting up shots that he had no business putting up, even by his own standards. And granted, he did pick it up a little bit in the second half, but just an overall game for Stephen Curry tonight, which really sucked because considering how good Luka Dončić was, they needed an A-level type game from Stephen Curry. In the first quarter alone, as I mentioned a moment ago, a quarter where he was just forcing things. He was a -10 in the net rating. He scored just 2 points in the opening quarter, despite playing in nearly 10 minutes. He was 1 for 7 from the field in the first quarter. He was 0 for 4 from deep. It was just a bad start to the game. And again, he rebounded, but it was too little too late. Well, this show was rolling, and I decided that the chat was awesome. They were bringing up a lot of fascinating points. I decided to address everyone, and this turned into a 2-part show. Been a while since I've done one of these where I just kept going until every topic was exhausted. Figured it was a good way to end 2023. So stay tuned for part 2. It continues. We're talking Warriors. We're talking the good stuff. We're talking what's going wrong. But it's mostly just everything everyone in the chat for a live show wanted to get off their chest. Anything that was on their mind, we tackled it. Stay tuned for part 2 of Locked On Warriors.